Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini conference. I'm your host, Sayal Hur. This mini conference is composed of a few panel conversations focused on the real world application of timeless wisdom. The backdrop is that we are in a world experiencing a leadership crisis on a global scale across various dimensions, both personal and professional, private and public, among many other dimensions, resulting in widespread struggle and suffering. Much of what we're experiencing stems from embracing an almost Pollyannish perspective that romanticizes leadership, human nature, and reality, sterilizes our organizations and enterprises, and infantilizes people in leadership roles, among others. When in reality, we should be embracing a more realistic perspective that integrates every aspect of human nature and reality, including the good, the bad, and the ugly. The Art of War, or the Sun Tzu, provides profound timeless insights into leadership, strategy, culture, conflict, execution, and much more, offering approaches for surviving and thriving in today's reality. The objective of these conversations is to engage a few forward thinkers and forward doers who are reshaping the modern world through the wisdom of the art of war, to explore the gap between principles and practice where reality and theory converge, to explore applying ancient wisdom to modern day scenarios, highlighting the dynamics between intentions and outcomes, and to illuminate insights for engaging in challenging environments. Welcome to the Art of War in the Wild mini conference.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello.
And definitively the audience welcome likewise. If you are live with us or if you are listening to the recording, this is our fourth panel with these fine individuals. And without too much more to say, we would love for you good folks to introduce yourselves. So please, maybe we start off with John, Chris, and then Dave.
Definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm John Cherian. I help organizations with transformation. Additionally, I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. Family of 5, I have a wife, been married for the past 10 years, 3 small kids, 9, 7, and 5. They keep me busy, so you won't see me much on social media. But there is a reason why I'm consciously saying that. Being me out here, John is going to represent a practitioner of the art of war, right? So everything that I say going forward, take it with a pinch of salt. Mind it, I'm a practitioner. This is not a prescription. All experiences would be different, but I hope that I provide some value from a practitioner standpoint.
That's awesome, John. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, guys. I'm Chris Herring. I didn't mention my personal life previous conversations like this, but I will today. Yeah, I'm also married. I have a couple of kids. They're a little bit older, late teens, early 20s, believe it or not. And my wife and I live here in New Jersey. The reason why I'm mentioning that, and I'm glad you mentioned it, John, is because the art of war has become a core part of my identity and just how my thinking on a day-to-day basis, whether I'm thinking about how to get my kids to pick up after themselves, or I'm thinking about how to, help transformation in the workplace. And so I primarily work in the product space, the product management space, product leadership. And I try to apply the principles of art of war to help organizations make the transformations they need, whether they're micro transformations specifically for a feature of a product or broader transformations for their organizations and their teams. So pleased to be here, Sai. Thank you for having me.
And I'm Dave. I am very excited to be here because I never get to talk to people about this stuff. Other than Sai, I've never met anybody else that studies this book the way that I do. I live in Brooklyn. I'm married. My kid's graduating from graduate school tomorrow.
Nice.
And I thank you. And I've been using this stuff since college in a lot of different ways. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. I think most recently, I'm building a course for Modus Institute on how to use the art of war to develop better collaboration with teams and organizations that are going through transformation. And Sai, like when you were talking about reading it backwards, I had to do that. I mean, I had to like pull everything out and like take the whole thing apart and figure out how to put it back together in a way to make it make sense to me. So I don't know. I'm grateful to not be the only Art of War nerd in the room for once.
Welcome.
That's
welcome.
awesome. That's awesome, Dave.
Welcome all around. And there's much more to say around pulling it apart. And there's almost, and I have to mention it, given that you've taken us there, there's almost a secret architecture to it, to be honest with you, that I've heard no one talk about. So
I would like to debate that with you. I'm ready to go.
So it's not a debate, it's an exploration, my good man. So by all means, but there's definitively a secret architecture underneath the surface that's powerful. But gentlemen, nothing more about you guys than me here. What does this book really mean to you? So maybe we go around and get us started there.
Well, I'll go. Being a coach, it's very important for us to be on a lifelong journey. And that can only be fruitful if you have a good mentor around you. I'm fortunate and I'm one of the luckiest to have Sai. But Sai is pretty busy. He's not available most of the time. That's where Art of the War comes in for me. It's a mentor that lives with me all the time, that I refer to, that I seek into, look into, right? It is there by my side. It's constantly feeding me and uplifting me as well. We'll talk more about it as to how it did influence me and what it means deep down in detail. Chris or Dave?
Go for it, Dave.
Okay. So I feel like I'm unlike most of the guests. So I didn't get introduced to it by Sai, so I had no mentor for a really long time. I just kept reading different translations. The way I always explain my use of it is, a lot of people I've met use the Bible to solve all their problems. I use the Art of War. And I always say to people, like, you can use it for everything except your marriage. But then I did recently interviewed one of my favorite translators, and he's done a whole thing about how he uses it in his marriage. So I still find that to be a territory I don't want to walk into. But for me, after I'd been using it for a while, I started teaching it. People would react to it, negatively because of the war aspect of it. And for me, war is just negotiation. And everything we do, whether I'm asking you what time it is, or we're fighting over a country, or I'm trying to get your team to actually show up to the retrospective, it's all negotiation. So I just look at what's in that book as a set of tools to find balance where there isn't any, and to help me be better prepared to negotiate with people.
That's really interesting, Dave. That's a good segue for me, actually, because I probably knew about the book in the back of my mind in some ways, but I only got introduced to it several years ago when I was working with Sai for a period of time. And I honestly love the way Sai introduced me to it, which was we were part of a transformation engagement that I got pulled into. And I was lucky enough to get pulled into it because it created an awareness in me that was always on the edge of being clear, but needed a little bit of a push. And Sai really helped with that push, and being part of that engagement really helped with the push. But then I was given the book at the end of the engagement rather than at the beginning. So it wasn't hey, read this book and then we'll enact what you learned from it. And I happen to think that's kind of the perfect way to be introduced. And it's really, I was thinking about this over the last 24 hours. It's really been something that I now associate with my identity generally, but also a bit of a confirmation for how I've always thought and how I've always engaged with the world and other people. So for me, it's like it's a grounding. It's funny that you mentioned the Bible. I mean, I've read different philosophers over the years, and certainly have read passages from the Bible over the years. And it doesn't have to be any one thing, right? Sometimes I go back to Marcus Aurelius, and sometimes I look at the Art of War. Really just depends on where I am but it it is part of my foundational grounding at this point in my life. Yeah.
Can I ask a question of everybody?
Go for it.
So I'm really curious about one thing. Like for me, in going through the book over the years, I will pick out different thoughts or techniques or whatever, and I'll spend like months trying to figure out how to use it, like practice. I mean, to me, it is something you practice.
Mm-hmm.
But like you, Chris, you're talking about, internalizing it. I find that I'm like suddenly switching into thinking about stuff one way or the other. I don't know if I could do all of it at once, but I'm wondering if you guys consciously try to employ different things from that book in your day to day.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you. In and out, Dave.
Yeah.
I use this book, but there is a phase that happens initially when you are introduced to the book. You are treating this book like any other book, trying to read the text and acquire some knowledge or knowing out of it. The art of war is slightly different, right? There is a lot of knowledge in it. Take this knowledge, these lessons learned, and and practically practice it in the current situation that you have, right?
Yeah.
And then they will say things will emerge, right? So I know Heart of War many a times in our professional networks been brought in as the supermodel of strategic thinking or the go-to book for leadership, right? This is where, as I was reading The Art of War and looking at it from a practitioner standpoint, it talks about different roles, right? The sovereign, the sage commander, and the army too. If you look around as a common man, like any one of you, I have wife, I have kids, I have a job to keep, and mind you, I have an EMI to pay, I have a mortgage to pay, I've got a lot of other issues. I take this and practice it day in and day out.
Yeah.
I unfortunately do not have that big leadership role where I work, but I want to practice the sage commander. So what I did is I took that and I thought, where would I fit in? Or in my day-to-day life, where am I the sage commander, right? Or the sovereign? The best thing I have control over or influence over was my family. So here you go. I am the leader of this family. But mind you, I am the self-appointed leader. I have my wife who also feels she is the self-appointed leader of the family who needs to drive the family towards success. There comes conflict. The art of war says that conflict is natural and unavoidable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is where, as a practitioner, and for me, mind you, I was not introduced to the English language like you were. Language to me is very funny. So I start to play with words. Are these really conflicts or are these differences? I find peace by calling them differences. The reason being, no two human beings are the same. We are all different. Our differences are your uniqueness. We are not here to change anyone, but what we are here to change is when you and I are associated for a purpose or a common intent, how do we conduct ourselves to meet the purpose or the intent that we are here for, right? And then that use of art of war into every association that I go about conducting my day-to-day life is where art of being been pretty instrumental to me. Chris?
Yeah, that's really good, John. There's a lot there. Dave, and to respond to what you were asking, I mean, I certainly have not read it anywhere near as much as you have from what you're saying. I actually find it a little, and really just depends on what's going on for me and the time of year and what's going on for me at work, what's going on in my personal life. Sometimes I find it like overwhelming. Sometimes I find it a little humbling. Wait, that's why that went wrong, because I didn't take the lessons, or I didn't put the work in. I didn't prepare. I didn't approach it as a sage commander, if you will. So sometimes it's good, but other times I just find that if I read it too frequently, it becomes mechanical as opposed to natural in what I'm trying to do. My greatest moments in day-to-day, leadership activity are when I did something naturally, and an hour later or after I leave the situation, I'm reflecting on it, and I go that it's completely connected to the art of war in some way, right? So I think I'm not discouraging you, Dave. I hope I'm not discouraging.
No, not at all. I'm really just curious.
You could read it too much, and it just like anything, any other leadership book, you could read it too much, and then it becomes a little too mechanical. That's all. And humans aren't mechanical. So
yeah. I find I have like phrases from it that like sit in the back of my head, and they just pop up at certain times.
Yeah, that's the natural stuff I'm talking about. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
So
Dave, your thoughts, Dave?
Powerful question. Please go on, Dave. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's just, certain things are always present. Like, know the person you're negotiating with and know yourself. Being patient, waiting for the right moment. And I think I've translated a bunch of them into other things in my head too. But like knowing when you're in a position of weakness and being at ease with being weak until you're not weak anymore, that has been like transformative for me, because I've been in situations where I've tried to like brute force my way into like a position of power. And when I don't have it, I just have to be like, okay, I don't have it right now. Like, I'm just going to have to wait my turn. And just being in that moment and constantly being observant.
Know thyself, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like a thing I always come back to, constantly.
Yeah. It's there. It sounds like for all three of us, it's just
present.
It's present.
Yeah.
So what happens, Dave? What happened to me was, right, as you are practicing this and as you are switching your mindset or the role that you play during the whole course of 24 hours, right, you condition yourself so well and you get so comfortable by switching the context and then being in the moment, in the zone.
Yeah.
The goal is to get there consciously.
Huh. Okay.
Say more, John. What do you...
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
9 o'clock, I'm at work. I work from home. 9 o'clock, I'm at home, working from home. I'm on cam, having a serious meeting. My kid in the kid's bedroom is sick. You expect me to have an agile mindset? I'm a human, right? What we are today forgetting as we go about conducting our day-to-day business around us, we forget that we are dealing with humans.
Yeah.
And the one who is initiating this me is also a human. The art of war talks a lot about enemy or the other side. As a practitioner, I'll tell you this. Many a times the enemy is you or within you. The other side is also you. And I'll tell you this. I just started off with the who am I, and I haven't gone far. I've realized how pathetic, how bad, how much in bad shape I was. Because I was looking at myself from the other side to say, hey, is John trustworthy? Is he pure? Is he authentic? Can he be my sage commander? We lie a lot to ourselves. The art of war will bring it to our attention, right?
Yeah, that's
during the during the COVID times, chaos is so good that it really tested all of us, right? We as a family were at home. The one we got married to, we call our better half. I know my friend who was running to the place of worship. I told him, you never go to a place of worship? He says, anything to get away from my wife. So what if it means death, right? So all jokes apart, there's a lot we learn about ourselves, right? And this learning will be brought to your attention through the art of war, through conscious practice. Thoughts?
So I have a question for you guys as a follow-up to this. When I first started practicing it, it was all about how do I get other people to do stuff I want them to do. And I tied it very closely to my study of social engineering practices. Like they're almost like hand in hand as I learned to use this stuff. And I'm wondering if there's a connection for you guys with that as well, or it's totally separate and I'm on an island by myself.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
Do you mind saying that again? Because I think it's key to hear what you just said respectfully.
Sure. Yeah. When I started to practice the art of war originally, I mean, not now, but originally, it was all about how do I get other people to do stuff. I picked up on it from, I'm embarrassed to say this, but watching Wall Street with Charlie Sheen. And the first one I read was the Clavel translation, which was, but I was trying to use it to get people to do stuff. And I started to study social engineering practices. And to me, those things were like hand in hand for a really long time. How do I at a point in time, it was about, I don't want to say manipulation, motivating people to do certain things. Now, it's more about creating opportunity for things to happen. But I'm just wondering if you guys tie that stuff together too, or not.
Chris, I'll give you an opportunity, but real quick. Dave, don't feel guilty. We all have been there. I read this, right? When you're ignorant, you're confident. And then when you have this newfound knowledge, you are so excited that you want to go change the world. But then in the Art of War, it says the sage commander speaks not through his words, but through his deeds. Right? You get attracted to the sage commander. So what it tells us, whenever we want to bring about change, true practitioners of Art of War will help exemplify that through their behavior and their deeds. Chris.
Yeah, it's really good. There's a lot there, Dave. I don't know a lot about social engineering, so I can't say I have a lot of familiarity with it. I can imagine what the discipline is really like, but yeah, I mean, I certainly there was probably a point in time when after I read it the first time, maybe I was like, oh, that's all this is. It's really just about getting people to do things, so I don't have to do things. And then I thought about, like, I don't know how you guys feel about, like, Tim Ferriss and, the 4-hour work week. And if I use the Art of War, maybe I can only work 4 hours a week and make a lot of money.
Read a lot of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes. But it's so much deeper than that. And it definitely takes experiences to realize that, right? Real world experiences. And like John, like you said, whether that's with your own family or whether it's, in the workplace, whether it's both going on in the same room because of COVID, as you mentioned, you really need the experiences to figure out how to apply it.
Yeah.
Yeah. My perspective. Yeah.
Dave, thank you for that. All around, gentlemen. Dave, did you have another thought, or because I wanted to throw something in to kind of see how?
No, go ahead. Good.
To kind of see what you're thinking. So there's a pattern that's really interesting that emerges in this conversation. I would love for you folks to kind of talk to it and see what you think. One aspect of that pattern is there's a trigger. There's a trigger. Almost someone outside of you has to observe something and mention it to you, or raise your awareness to it. So an observation from the outside, put it that way. So that is one aspect that I kind of hear. Another aspect is there's a degree of naturalness to this. So if someone observes it, you're naturally doing it. You may not recognize you're doing it. And then you have to experience the Art of War. And I think, Chris, you said it almost explicitly. You have to experience it before you even read it, in a sense, the way that you described it, live it, if you will, and then put words and language to it. So really, I would love for you three to kind of talk about, the observation from the outside is one aspect, the naturalness that you find in yourselves as natural leaders, as we would talk about it, and then definitively the experience of experiencing it and then putting words to that experience.
Yeah.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go for it, Dave. Yeah.
And this kind of is going to tie back to what John said a moment ago. So I feel like I'm always experiencing it. Like every interaction, it's often not intentional, right? But every interaction with another person is a negotiation and changes that nature of that relationship forever. I think, John, you were talking about being intentional with this stuff. I think there's times when I can show up like very present and aware of, I'm going to like follow this path or try to do this thing. But more often than not, it's like the lessons in that book are like my companion, and we're riding together. And, sometimes I have to try to do that formless thing. Sometimes I try to, be this or that or whatever. But it's always with the intent of achieving a positive outcome for myself and whoever I'm interacting with. I think on the side of people kind of applying it to me, I mean, maybe it's just, it happens. When it's skillful, I love it. Like, I totally don't mind if somebody just like bends me 7 different ways, as long as it's skillful. When it's ham-fisted, I can't handle it. and then I get kind of uppity.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Dave. I think we've probably all worked for folks that were not skillful, but yet in leadership positions, or worked with folks. I mean, I don't know. Sai, help me tease that apart a little bit. When you said there are three things you're observing here, and how they're connected, is that where you're going, or?
So basically, all of you mentioned in one form or another that almost someone had to observe you being a sage commander, for lack of better words, and then saying to you, hey, you're being a sage commander in a very, very subtle way.
Was it that they, of course, you and I can talk about this. Was it that they observed me being a sage commander, or that I had the potential to be a sage commander? Right?
Actually, both. Both. Even seeing the spark that is you.
Yeah.
And or observing the spark manifesting into a flame and then ultimately a forest fire, quite honestly.
Yes. And now I feel like I'm doing that in my leadership roles, right? Or even in my consulting roles. I'm trying to find the people in the organization that are formless, that have the spark within them. I don't talk about the art of war. I never even mention it in the workplace. I barely mention it at home. But I think that is so key, is being able to find those folks and build those alliances. And when I think back to the leaders that I've liked working for, and they've found me and encouraged me and gave me more responsibility, I have no idea. I've never asked them if they were students of Sun Tzu or not, but regardless, they were acting as a sage commander, and that's why I was attracted to them. So I recognize those connections, if you will, now in hindsight. Yeah.
To add to what you're saying, Chris, it is there. They say, like the text says, right? It is there in all of us. Yeah. We just don't realize it. Yeah. And many a times, like, we have the aha moment when we start realizing, oh, I've experienced that. This is what it is. Right. And then you start feeding that experience. And then, Dave, when I say consciously, right, I'm trying to get to that stage wherein I can get to be in the zone unconsciously. It should come naturally. Right. But in the process of practicing to get better, I'm trying to make myself conscious of that practice again and again. A state will come. Maybe I am thinking when that consciousness is not needed. Yeah. As long as I'm taking the whole, right?
Okay. I'm glad you said that.
Or else I will question myself too.
Yeah, because I feel there's times when I am intentional, but it's more just like now it just switches.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when you're with situational leadership, or if you've been doing coaching for a while, you just react, and then you realize, oh, I guess I just changed gears. Mm-hmm. Because you just sense and respond.
John, I'd love to pick on one thing you said for a moment, and maybe we could have a separate set panel just on this topic alone, which is,
I bet you Dave's going to reach out to us after this panel discussion. Go ahead, Chris.
Which is, you said it's there, and the book says it's there within all of us. I'm not sure. I think the ability is there, certainly as humans, but where people are in their life based on their own experiences and how they've been manipulated or coached, or what they've learned, or what they believe in. Denial is the strongest emotion we have, so they might just deny it. It'd be hard to overcome. Yes, I think everyone has the potential, if they were willing to be that exposed, that everything they've thought of to this point was wrong, right? They might have the potential because they're a human being, but I'm not sure everyone has the ability to absorb it and put it into practice. I'm not sure.
So, Chris, let me give my perspective, and I might be totally wrong over here.
No, there's no wrong.
This is what puts me at peace, right? Yeah. Because I have to work with people. I cannot just give up on them. Yeah. I'm the sage commander, right? Yeah. It's not about winning today. It's about victory that is ongoing, that can be sustainable.
Sure.
So Whenever I work with another human, I see it in them, right?
Mm.
They have a path. I'm not sure if it is the moral path. They have a path. They know who they are. They defined it different. They know who their enemy is. They look at their enemy differently.
Mm-hmm.
They look at heaven and earth differently.
Mm-hmm.
The art of war will change that perspective to say it's not about win or lose, it's about victory, wherein you're not getting the other onto your side, but you're bringing both to something bigger, greater than either sides. The moment you bring your thought over there, victory is attained.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This is its own panel, because can they bring their thought there? I don't
Well,
know.
and what is victory? I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, if there's a war or a conflict, or I'm trying to get you to give me money or whatever, there's an imbalance.
Yeah.
And these are all tools to find balance.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's more, you know, a bunch of the translations say everyone practices the art of war. I think they just don't always do it with intent.
Or well. Yeah.
Or well, yeah.
Yeah.
So questions that cause other questions to emerge, exactly as we would anticipate. So, gentlemen, a lot of good sharing from your perspectives and your experiences. Stories that you can share with us that we can delve into and kind of demonstrate, you know, exemplify sort of the wisdom that you've embodied.
Yeah, I'll share a story of a recent experience I had with a company I was engaged with in a product leadership role. So it's interesting, applying the art of war to the product management space. And I don't know how much Dave or John, you guys know about the product space, but it's just interesting to me because I find that there are a lot of product leaders and product managers in general that, I mean, the heart of product management is taking ownership of the product. And there's a lot of folks that have that title or have been granted that role, and they're just not that good at it. They want to have the authority to make decisions about the product, but they don't want to do the work, and they don't want to take on the responsibility that's required to make informed, well thought out decisions about the product. So in this engagement that I'm referring to, there was a person that ended up working for me, who had a spark, who was a sage commander, and had the potential to be the future product leader of the entire organization, in fact. But his style was a little off, and the way he engaged with folks was a little sharp. And he didn't realize, he just had he didn't have a lot of self-awareness in terms of how he engaged with folks. So, I had no idea how long the engagement was going to last. I hoped it was going to last a long time, but I wasn't sure. And I wanted to make sure that I had a person in command who could take over should I leave. So I worked with him and tried to, and I never mentioned the art of war, just tried to make him much more self-aware through some techniques that I've learned from a certain individual about, hey, just pulling him aside after a meeting or something and just saying, hey, how do you think that went? And, but what occurs to me, and tying it all together, long story short, he's since moved on. We've both since moved on from the organization, and he is now a leader in his own right in the product and UX design space. And certainly I get a lot of joy out of knowing that, but and I'm still connected with him. But the point I'm trying to make is it's really applicable to any discipline or any industry, right? It's not just the coaching industry. It's not just, I don't know, software development, if you will. I mean, I've really found it to be applicable to any situation, any role somebody has. There are lessons in there that can help make them a more effective person at what they're engaged with. And it was just wonderful to test that out for real for the first time, and see it prove to be true. Yeah, but it was because he had that spark. I feel like I definitely chose the right person to experiment with, if you will. Yeah.
Cool, Chris.
Yeah.
Dave, you're on mute, so I'll go.
Yep.
Yep. Like I told you, I'm a practitioner, right? Practice it with my family. What is the success of our family? Who are we as a family? Were questions that we are still working on, right? It's not done yet. But as a practitioner and as having a family with 3 small kids, life becomes too demanding, right? So what we did is we sat back and said, why are we running from pillow to post around the clock? We looked at things and we cut down our social life a lot. The reason being, the priority was to give time to the kids who need it the most today. Because as we start growing, we know our family will go away, our kids will go away, but we wanted them to be connected, bonded to us. So we consciously had this conversation explicitly to say, hey, let's cut down on the social circles and then, divert that time towards what is highest priority to us. I know we can give a lot of examples within the organization, but this is something that applies to families as well. And this has to be done with the entire family over there. And you can think of the challenges when there's a 9-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old sitting, and you're trying to define who are we as a family, right? But yes, they are given a voice because it is their family too, right? And there'll be conflicts. I'm thinking I'm the leader. My wife thinks she's the leader, right? There is conflict. There is differences. But if this is not the right time to solve it for a sustainable victory, then we'll wait for the right situation or circumstances to arise. Some of this might be to wait for the kids to grow a little bit older, right? So that's how I used the art of war in my personal life. And then that's why you see the smiling face. I'm at peace. I'm happy. I'm in control. At least I think I'm in control. Dave.
Maybe your wife's the real sage commander.
Yeah.
Could be.
She just made you think you're
Letting you think you're in charge.
Exactly.
So for me, it was really more in doing work as running a PMO. And when I started doing consulting, going from one organization to another, the first tool that I really pulled out of it was the 5 measures. And I built like a Canvas-based version of it. And when I would get dropped into some new company, I was always just trying to gather as much information as I can and to try to understand the structure of it. So I looked at heaven and earth as like the political landscape and the organizational structure. I would look at the type of leadership, the level of discipline the company had. And then for the DAO, it was just like, what's the general vibe of this place? Like, how do people act? And just sitting down with that and like writing down on it and gathering whatever I could, it just made it so much easier to see other patterns and other things that were going on. I mean, it's like the whole thing is so systems thinking, like, but way before systems thinking. That's how I started with it, like just to try to use it like that, to try to understand what my environment was, because oftentimes when you're consulting, the client as an entity is the opponent that you're trying to like work with. Yeah. So I needed to understand them better. So that was kind of how I got my feet with it, I think.
And I often use this phrase when I talk about it. It just helped clear my eyes, is how I describe it, right? To see things with clear eyes.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm curious, as a consultant, as a fellow consultant, do you find it like, I don't know, today I find that most engagements, they just want the consultant to come in and do the work right away. They don't want to talk about some of the stuff you mentioned, right? Like there's no time to observe and orient and take a step back. And
well,
I'm sensing that anyway. I'm just curious if you're sensing this.
I sense that, but I also sense that 10, 15 years ago, like I remember going in and trying to get teams ready to start doing, like sprints or whatever. And a manager coming in and saying, you've been in here for a day and a half. It's time to start writing code.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I wonder if like the Slack effect has even shortened that, right? To like why aren't you running the thing yet already? Like,
I feel like people in general have let themselves be taken prisoner by a lot of these tools.
mm-hmm.
And they let the tools run them instead of the other
Yep.
way around. And I think that, like, for me, that's one of the things over the past couple of years that I've had to be very intentional about, is to step away from that stuff. Like, when I work, I turn off everything.
Yeah.
I'm
with you. 100%.
And that's the same with interacting with people too. Like, if I'm with people, I'm trying to just be with them.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're a rare breed.
Well, it's a practice. I'm not good at it. I'm just trying.
A small extension to Chris's question, right? You brought in as a consultant to transform an organization. The organization is paying you and the enemy is within, right? And it's chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how you navigate the challenges.
Yeah, the answer really is it depends. You try.
You have to do this.
Yeah,
Chris.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm taking care of this right here. I'll be right back. that sort of thing. It just, I don't know. I've been operating as a consultant for a relatively short time, and I find that in the few engagements I've been involved in, each one gets a little bit easier to recognize those patterns, and navigate it with more intent. From the outset, a little bit easier. So it's, first one probably took me a month to go, oh, now I see what's really going on here. The third one was probably 10 days or so. So I don't know, but I'm also aware enough to know that I might have just gotten lucky with the third one, and the fourth one might take me 3 months. I have no idea. So, yeah, but having this knowledge in me just gives me the confidence to know that I can navigate it.
Yeah.
That I shouldn't be afraid to just jump in and try. Right. Yeah.
Like the Sage Commander says, right? I will ensure that I'm not going to lose. I will cover all my bases. The enemy will give me that opportunity of victory. Right?
And it may mean changing what victory looks like in that engagement. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's X when I start. A month later, I say, no, it's Y. And Y might mean leaving that engagement, getting out of it. Right. Yeah.
So gentlemen, a great conversation. There's a couple, I know we've got about 15 minutes left. It would be remiss if you, and please, if anyone wanted to add anything relative to this thread before I shift threads a little bit. Anything, gentlemen, or are you good to shift a little bit?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I'd be quite remiss if I didn't take us back all the way to the beginning to something that was mentioned and get your thoughts. I think it was Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, that mentioned a religious text, if you will, as a source. So, and I think, Chris, you had brought it up as well, or you had kind of emphasized. So there's definitely a foundation. I think that was the word you used, Chris. The art of war might be foundational. And I look at also there's a core beyond the foundation, quite honestly. And that's a very, very interesting space and dynamic. And if we don't want to go here, please say something.
No, I think this is so you're talking about what gets added on top of it to help us understand it better or make sense of it.
So actually, even below it, I think the core is even deeper than the foundation.
Yeah.
I always look at the art of war, and this is again a very interesting space, because I do not believe this is explored enough in the masses. But if we look at the art of war as a foundation, there's something even more core for all of us below that foundation that empowers us and enables us to leverage the art of war the way we do.
Yeah, I've had thoughts like that, Sai. I wonder if I'll be alive long enough to really understand, to truly understand what the core meaning of it is. I think I do. I'm not sure. I think it's, as humans grow and humans mature and they get more experiences, their relationship with the core changes, evolves, gets richer. And maybe that is the core, that it evolves and is timeless, right? Yeah.
And forgive me, I want to add, if you don't mind, because when I interviewed James, that really spawned all this. I was very intentional to say that the art of war is foundational, but it's not core to me. So there's something deeper in that. So I'm very interested in, because you folks brought it up. That was ways back, but you folks brought it up. So I'm intrigued. Exactly. It's something
what's the difference in your mind? What's the difference between foundational and core? I mean, what can something be both? I'm trying to figure out the distinction you're making.
I think I get what can I take a stab
Please
at
chime
it?
in, Dave. Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things that I find incredibly irritating is when people make me watch the video of Bruce Lee going, "Be like water, my friend." And I'm always like, he stole that. That's from Sun Tzu. But to me, that is the center of everything, is everything we do to be able to survive to the next day, to be able to achieve what you're looking for. You have to be like liquid in a glass, constantly changing your shape, adjusting. There's a lot of power in water. There's a lot of gentleness in water. It sustains life. It takes life. We have to be that. Yeah, we have to be that adaptable to everything around us. And so that to me would be the center of all of it. Is that what you were kind of going after, Sai?
And this is exploration. So definitively, there's not one thing I'm going after, if you will. But
Okay.
I actually pulled up, as we're speaking, I pulled up my verbiage, if you will, when I introduced James. And I actually said, and this is verbatim, I said, while the Sun Tzu has been foundational to my personal and professional life, so both tangents, right? It is not at the root or core.
Not the heart.
Exactly. Not at the heart. Exactly. The soul, if I would refer to it.
Yeah.
And I also went on to say there is no comparison whatsoever between the core and the foundation. So it's a very interesting space, which respectfully, I don't think enough thought is being given to when people approach the art of war.
The foundation is like your operating system, and the core would be the machinery on which it runs.
The core would be the energy that drives it underneath.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely a space to ponder.
Yeah. I think those, I can understand the distinction. And thank you both for sharing on that. It's, I don't know. For me, sometimes it is core to who I am. It's not binary, right? Sometimes it is core to how I'm engaging with someone or something or an experience, and sometimes it's just the foundational lessons that I'm taking away and trying to put into practice. So,
well said.
And at least I'll tell you this, right, Chris? I've seen this many of folks. They just don't go and accept or engage in anything and everything that comes their way, right? They will look at it, they'll assess, they will look at the intent of the association, and only if I, as a sage commander, are in line with it, right, will I partner myself or commit. If not, no. That is how strong your core should be, because if you believe in it, you are 100% into it. Or I many times do this myself, right? If I don't believe in it, I stay out of the association. At least if I'm not helping, I'm not harming, right? And when you know that there's only limited time that you have, you better divert it to the highest priorities or what is of the highest value to you, or your purpose or your intent.
Well said. So, any other thoughts on this, or shall we move toward sort of closing thoughts and closing comments? Because I'm sure you three gentlemen have.
I keep thinking if you work with this stuff long enough, for me, it's been over 30 years of using this stuff, that it becomes part of you in a way that it's hard to distinguish between core and foundation.
Yeah, that's where I was going, Dave. Yeah, and I have only been using it for less than a decade, so yeah.
I can't separate the fact that I'm an Irish Catholic from Philly. That I'm sarcastic by nature. That's not I can't take that out of the equation anymore. So
I don't know. You probably could if you put enough intent into it.
Enough therapy. It could probably get better.
So definitively, we embody it. I really appreciate what you're saying. However, I would also challenge us, if we are to operate as sages, we we should challenge ourselves to understand when we're leveraging one thing versus leveraging something else, and they definitely intermingle and are entangled. So it is an interesting space. I'll tell you.
I don't think I'm there yet, Sai. I mean, as my relationship evolves with it,
Yeah.
being quite that intentional that you're talking about, I'm not there yet.
I would love to discuss and explore the same, Sai, because the Sage Commander, they talk about the Sage Commander not being an ideal citizen, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can use force, but for reasons wherein he can keep opportunities and possibilities open, right? And he would send his army is like his kids, but at times for the greater victory he would send his sons to battle for them to be sacrificed to achieve the greater victory. Now when I try to associate my thought process to that thought process of a Sage Commander, I find it hard. Right, I struggle a lot with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a key word that you just mentioned, is when we struggle, that emphasizes the tension between a foundation and core.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said it perfectly. And there's an interesting, and I definitely want to use this quote because it's a very key one. A lot of people approach this, and respectfully to all people who approach this from a studying perspective or an actual implementation perspective, a very practical perspective, which is what drives me, quite honestly. But the phrase in The Art of War, it's very direct. One can dispense with people and employ sheer. So to think about what that word dispense really means is a very powerful sentiment. But I digress now. So this is about you three. So gentlemen, anything else on this point? Because I would definitely be remiss not to have you do final comments before we close.
I feel uncomfortable thinking of myself as a Sage Commander. To me, it's more I'm a student, I'm a practitioner, and I'm endlessly curious about it.
I'm with you, Dave.
But it's interesting, like listening to everybody over the past couple of days talk about it from a leadership perspective. I have honestly, until these conversations, never really thought of it as a leadership thing. It was always about how do I build better relationships with people? How do I understand my position better? I mean, it is obviously on the, but I've never used it with that intent, which is maybe weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the definition of leader is interesting, right? Are you the leader when you're, I don't know, interacting with a car salesman and you're trying to get a great deal?
Sure, yeah.
Right. You are, right? But the leader doesn't have to necessarily mean, at least my
person in charge.
Yeah, it doesn't have to mean the person in charge of other people, right? It's that's the whole Go ahead.
But Chris, as a common man, as a part of that army or troops, I want my Sage Commander or my leadership to go through the art of war. The reason being that they can take the whole into perspective. Lately, I will tell you this, as a common man, the definition of recession has changed. How we report inflation has changed, right? I know somebody's taking decisions over there. Is it in our interest? Is the question. So this is where I look up to my leadership for purity and authenticity, right? And how well are they driving towards the pure intent, the purpose of what we all collectively should achieve, all of our well-being, right? Is that taken into consideration? I question that a lot, but the best thing is what I can do is, as a practitioner, right, trust that we are all good people. Everybody is working in that direction. I've had a lot of conversations with leaders. Though we look at it, we say that was a wrong decision. They tell me that their hands were tied because they have to satisfy multiple folks over there, the board of directors. At the same time, they've got to look at the well-being of all the employees. At the same time, add value to the customer as well. Right. So I saw this interview of Sundar Pichai the other day that he gave to Bloomberg, right, where the interviewer challenged him with Satya Nadella's ChatGPT launch and asking, would Google dance to this music? Sundar Pichai, I love this man. He said, hey, we are not here to dance to someone else's music. We have our own music and our own dance. We have a vision for a future point of time. If you are looking at this microsecond, yes, maybe. But we are not eyeing for this microsecond. Our vision and mission is in the future, and we are doing all that. And if I have cut people or if I've laid off people, I let them go. It is so as to we can cut all the bleeding arms and focus all the energy towards what is relevant to us for the future, right? That is where leadership comes into question.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, any final comments?
I'm just super grateful to all of you for being there and for existing, because I don't ever get to talk about. I mean, I've spent so many hours on this book, and Sai, you're literally the first person I ever met that had studied it that way beyond me.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Sai. Thank you for bringing us together. David and John.
Yeah, it was great meeting you guys.
Yeah, meet you and converse with you and engage with you for this hour. I said to Sai earlier, I feel like we barely scratched the surface on this stuff, and we should almost make it a regular series, not a podcast. Though. I'm off of podcasts now. There's too many podcasts.
Thank you. Anything else, John? Any sort of closing thoughts or anything at all?
No, I just wanted to thank the panelists, the viewers, and the future viewers who are going to watch it through recording or something, right? And then knowing the folks on the panel,
Yes.
you know our intent, you know what we are doing over here. So if there is anything we can do to contribute to something bigger, please reach out to us.
Yes, please
Right?
do. That was well said.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Chris and Dave, I took the liberty of involving you,
Yes.
knowing that you guys are nice.
And thank you, Sai, for bringing us together.
Yeah, thanks, Sai.
Thank you, Sai.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. So definitely appreciate the audience being here. I think the conversation is very powerful, especially the last conversation in this series. And we'll definitely have more around the art of war, particularly, and how people have leveraged the wisdom and practice. I think one of the key things I would emphasize, kind of taking away from this, the word sage is an interesting one. We really didn't get a chance to explore it. But if you look at sages, what is a sage? What is a leader? All those factors we explored a bit. But the best sages, the best leaders are indeed first curious and then creative. And that is very, very powerful. And as respectful, I've always said, and I apply this to myself. This is the way that I look at myself, but I really look at it to the way that you good folks are, is that we're students of human nature and human dynamics in the context, very intentional, of the human condition, because it changes. And to me, that's been, over 50 years, I'll say close to 60 years, kind of what runs through my soul. But nonetheless, I digress relative to myself. We thank the audience. We thank the wisdom from the three gentlemen, and I am sure there's much, much more that we can delve into, and we'll definitively look for such opportunities. So thank you, gentlemen, all around.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.